Hello, chess family. It's me, National Master Jesse James, and it's time for another installment for how to play the Accelerate Dragon. In this one, we're going to be learning about the very nice strategic idea of playing knight to g4. There's always different spots to play it. Basically, you're going to be putting pressure on the bishop. Let's go and take a look at this nice game. Here we start up with d4, c5, knight f3, knight c6, d4, c takes, knight takes, and pawn g6 going into this Accelerated Dragon. Knight c3, bishop g7, developing and attacking the knight. Bishop e3 gets played here, which is correct. Knight f6, and here is one of the moves that is already allowing this knight g4. It's queen to d2. If you want to stop this from happening, a lot of times what happens is you can play the pawn move to h3. The line typically will go with bishop c4, and black will go ahead and castle here. You play bishop b3, and after d6, knight g4 is being threatened. Now you can play either h3 or f3. I prefer h3 in these positions, though. So h3 is and f3 are the ways that you can stop what's about to happen here for white. So knight f6, queen d2, and here black goes ahead and castles first, which is always a good idea. And bishop c4 gets played, and here we go. We get to play the move knight to g4 exclam. Why is this so important? Well, one of the things is that we're putting pressure on the knight here on d4. When the knight moves, we got discovery attack for here. And well, remember this bishop is worth $3, but this bishop's worth about 5, maybe even 6, because this is one of the key defenders and attackers for this fianchettoed king, right? Well, when white wants to try and trade this guy off, this is not going to happen this time, because when the knight comes to g4, the bishop can't move anywhere. Again, if you try to move it around somewhere to save it, well, you just lose a piece here with something like knight takes on d4. So the bishop has to stay here, or else you're going to be losing a piece. Here, white tries to get out of this, but again, it just doesn't work out too much. What do we play here as white? Well, the only thing we can try to do is this knight takes on c6. And well, how do we take back here? Should we play pawn takes on c6 or d takes on c6? There's only one good move here. Remember, I do encourage you to push pause, see if you can figure out the idea. Which way do we take? We're going to go ahead and take back with the d pawn exclam. Wait a second, I thought the rule is take back toward the center. Now this is true, but in this scenario, the reason why we do this is because after b takes on c6, white can just play something like bishop to f4, and well, white didn't really get punished at this at all, right? I mean, the game, black is definitely slightly better in this position. We'll probably play something like d6, but now the knight will have to move back at some point, and again, we didn't get to punish him because we don't get to win the bishop. Now the difference is whenever we play d takes c6, we have two different things going on here. We have pressure on the queen exchange and also the knight taking on e3. Now remember, when white's playing this game, they're typically going for a strong center and also a kingside attack. Well, after b takes c6, this is exactly what black wants. Black is more than happy to go to endgames because the endgames, as far as the pawn structure goes, is typically going to be better for them. The bishop's already aimed over to here toward the queen side, so black has better endgames in the Sicilians. With that being said, d takes c6 got played. And really, white really has no choice. They went ahead and played queen takes on d8. Again, if you try to play something else, let's just say you try and castle. What do you play here? Simple chess. You just go queen takes d2 here because of a nice tactic. You can't go bishop takes because, well, knight takes on f2 will give you a little bit of a headache. And of course, if you play rook takes on d2, the knight takes on e3, and black has won the dark square bishop, it's already giving, a negative 2 advantage, which is plenty of an advantage because you didn't even win a pawn here. Alright, well, back to the game. Queen takes d8 was played, rook takes on d8, and now the bishop had to move, so it went to g5 to threaten the pawn. We're just going to go over the rest of this game, just because I always like to go over the strategies in the openings that we actually play. I feel like a lot of times games just only go over the opening and then they stop. It's good to go over as many games as possible in your openings because you can see how things progress and also learn about key squares. Here, I like the way that black plays. He plays very aggressive. Remember, the main idea for black in this game is to open up the center and then also go ahead and go for a queenside attack. So here he goes. Pawn to b5 gets played, attacking the bishop. Bishop retreats to b3, and again pawn to a5. Let's see here. Is there a reason why they're not taking the e7 pawn? Well, taking on e7 right now would not be a very good idea, as after taking on e7, rook just goes to e8, and now we have two pieces being attacked. Okay, so what about this idea after bishop b3, a5? Can we take on e7 now? Oof, definitely not. Taking on e7 would be a terrible idea, because again, we play rook e8, the bishop moves somewhere safe, and then we get to trap the bishop with pawn to a4. Very, very common idea and trap in the Sicilians. You get to trap these bishops. So, what does white play here? We have to make an escape square. We have to make sure our pieces are safe. Pawn to a4 exclam again, allowing the bishop to have an escape square, but also even fighting back on the queen side here. White did try their best to play spirited. Pawn b4 gets played. Again, black is just going to be pushing these pawns forward, and you can see that black has a very natural attack here. If this knight moves, well, b2 is going to be hanging, so the knight went to d1. And let's keep this going. What do we play here? There's one important square that we're trying to get control over. In fact, this is a very important square in most Sicilians. Do you know what square that is? What are we going to try to fight over in this game? Hopefully you found it. We're trying to fight over the c4 square. We want the pawn to go to c5, c4. But obviously, well, the bishop can just take. So a nice move here. We're going to stop him from castling. We're going to get control over c4. We go ahead and play. Bishop a6, exclam. Again, c5, c4, and also stopping White from castling. White cannot be in a worse position here. Pawn to f3, a nice idea here. Again, please don't go pawn grabbing. After bishop takes on e7, rook e8, rook takes e4 is coming in. Well, this is not going to be good for white here. Remember, guys, if you want to be a strong chess player, always try to ignore your opponent's threats and make stronger threats yourself. You can see how this pawn on e7 is hanging, but on each line, well, it was never really good to take. All right, pawn f3 gets played. Now there might be ideas about being able to take on e7 since e4 is now being defended, but I'm sure black is just going to go and defend this. Knight f6 blocking this bishop. Knight to e3, a very nice move here, as the knight is going to be controlling the c4 square, and this is very good. And if c5 gets played, you can see that d5 can become weak here too. So white is again holding their own. All right, let's do it. Pawn h6 attacking the bishop. Bishop goes to h4. And knight to h5 here, exclam. Why is this such a good move? Remember, whenever you're playing this accelerated dragon, the dark squares are strong squares that we're playing on. So you can see with the knight going to h5, we're looking at this beautiful square on f4 for the knight to jump to. And also we opened up the bishop to attack on b2. And it's not even just about losing this pawn. After bishop takes on b2, bishop c3 check, well, this can be very annoying as well. You're losing squares really fast here. Penetration of the second rank can happen very fast here. Well, I think white really has no good choice. Bishop takes on e7. Rook to d7. You could try to take on b2 here, but there's no need to try and go into crazy positions. Remember, when you're in better positions, maintain and restrain. Here we go. Rook to d7 gets played. Bishop c5. And now we take on b2. Again, the idea of taking on b2 is not only to attack the rook. It's bishop c3 check, which is very, very hard to deal with. White goes ahead and plays rook d1 because, well, that's the best square for it. If you do play rook b1, the game will end quite fast here. Bishop c3 check, king f2, and this is the penetration square, rook to d2 check. And once the rook is on here, a rook on the 7th is worth a pawn, black is going to double up, and white is just going to be losing here very, very fast. In fact, there is even some checkmating ideas here for black. Well, in the game, the correct move was played. Rook to d1, rook f to d8. Rook a to d8. Always a good idea. A lot of people have a bad idea about trading right away. This is definitely not a positional way to play. After knight takes, the rook does slide over to have the open position, but you don't want to lose a tempo here. All right, back to the game. Ooh, you even see the knight can take the bishop there too. So, back to the game. The best move was played, doubling up rooks, maintaining this very strong battery or control over the open file here. Rook takes on d7, rook takes on d7, and here, well, you think white is good? You think black is good? I always encourage you guys to go ahead and try and understand and evaluate each position. With that being said, push pause right now and go ahead and guess. What do you think this position is? Do you think this is better for white, better for black, even? And I encourage you to get as precise as possible and go ahead and try and guess -1, -2, +1, +2. All right, hopefully you took a guess here. Here, believe it or not, it's already -2.6. Hopefully you were getting right around it. If you didn't realize that white was not just worse here, you definitely need to work on this. Why? Because being able to evaluate your games correctly is only going to help your game. Here, we know that black is better because look at black's pieces. Every piece is good. The knight has the f4 square going to. The rook is on the only open file. The bishop's cutting through. The bishop's about to jump in. Now let's take a look at white's pieces. This knight is actually not badly placed. This bishop is, again, on an okay square. Bishop's actually okay. But white's king, very, very bad. And even worse, the rook is bad. So you're almost down a whole piece here. That's why the evaluation is giving, again, a -2. Basically saying you're down 2 pawns, even though you're not really down any material just yet. But the odds of it happening, very high. Here, white makes a move that looks like a good move, but it turns out just to be a blunder. Knight to c4 got played, and well, black to move and win. Can you find the idea how to make progress here and just force white into a terrible position? All right, hopefully you found it. If you found this, you're at -5 now. You're up an extra rook. Makes sense. Bishop c3 check. King goes to f2. Bishop takes c4, exclam. Here we're just going to be winning a pawn, and with this extra pawn that becomes a passed pawn soon, well, the game's pretty easy to win here. Bishop takes rook check. King over to e3. Definitely the best move here. You don't want to go back there as well. You'll be losing your rook. Rook takes on c2. Bishop to b6. Definitely a nice try here, but again, this is just not going to be any good because our passed pawn is going to be a lot faster and stronger. Bishop to e5 exclam. Beautiful move here. Go ahead and stopping this idea from happening. What was black's idea here? Hopefully you found it. Whenever we move the bishop, we're threatening two different ideas. Bishop to f4 check is very strong. Rook takes on c4 is very strong here. And well, this bishop is having a hard time where to go. Where did it go? Well, bishop d3 was played, and simple chess, rook takes on g2. Again, threatening some major ideas. Knight f4, bishop f4 check. Oof, definitely not good here for white. Well, white went ahead and took the pawn because, well, if you don't, you're just losing. And the game ends pretty nicely here. Pawn c5. What's better than one passed pawn? Two. Make sure you make your pieces all work together. And two passed pawns is plenty enough to win this game really fast. Bishop b1 got played. And now knight to f4. And unfortunately, that's just game over here. There's really no good way to escape checkmate here. Can you find that way that black's gonna be checkmating? Hopefully you did. Here we have lots of different ideas here. The idea here is to go rook to e2 for checkmate. Wait a second, can't we just play rook over to e1 to stop it? You can, but again, you can't stop the checkmate in 2 here. The idea is to get the bishop to d4, but we can't do that just yet because, well, the king will take the knight. So simple chess, you just play g5, and there's no good way to stop bishop to d4 checkmate. Oof. What a nasty, nasty way to go. Well, guys, I hope you enjoyed this game. Remember, knight g4 is a very important strategic tool to get a better game when you're playing the Accelerated Dragon. We'll see you in the next one.